Well, for more on ISIL's advances in Iraq, we are joined by Edwin Smith in Los Angeles. Edwin is an author and international law professor at the University of Southern California. He's been on our broadcast quite a few times. Always good to see you. Yet another town in Iraq fell to ISIL, a small town about 7 kilometers east of Ramadi fell overnight. ISIL now controls 2 major cities in Iraq, Ramadi and Mosul. So how did it get to this point, would you say?
Hi, it's very good to see you. I think that Ramadi, the U.S. government did attempt to downplay the fall of Ramadi. And looking at a map, you can understand why, because Fallujah, between Ramadi and Baghdad, is already under the control of the Islamic State, so that the fall of Ramadi is not a complete tactical disaster. The Iraqi forces will be on the defensive against an advancing ISIL force, and one of the advantages that the Iraqi forces will have is if ISIS tries to move toward Baghdad, they will be visible. As long as they're defending, they are much more protected. But if they start to move toward Baghdad, they expose themselves to air power, which is the biggest threat that they face in the near term.
Biggest threat they face, and many might say that the Iraqi force is not that great of really a threat for them. They've not performed all that well. What's it going to take for them to turn things around?
I heard a very interesting discussion yesterday where one military commentator suggested that perhaps U.S. advisors should not be operating at the brigade level, but they should be operating at the battalion level. Have U.S. advisors closer to the fighting so that they can advise Iraqi officers how not to fall apart in the midst of an attack. That is one suggestion, but that's, at least to my mind, a bit of a frightening suggestion, because it reminds me of Vietnam, the early days of Vietnam. We went from advisors to combat troops in the same way. For high-level advisors, lower-level advisors, combat troops. I do not think there is any chance whatsoever of U.S. combat troops being involved on a large scale, although the behaviors of special operations forces recently with regard to the Islamic State are an indicator of what will happen in the future.
What about the country itself? What are the options, in terms of plans, counterattack? Where do you see this thing going?
Well, I think to the extent that ISIS expands its efforts toward approaching Baghdad, they make it more feasible for Iraq to take advantage to develop very strong defensive positions, and from those defensive positions develop counterattacks. An immediate counterattack in this situation might not be a very wise way to go. To the extent that you have an effective force that could attack ISIS before it gets settled, that might work, but I'm not sure that the Iraqi army is operating at that level at this point.
The White House called the fall of Ramadi a setback, but not a strategic disaster that would alter strategy in Iraq. Would you agree with that or disagree?
Yes, I would. After looking at the map, it is true that Ramadi is a substantial settlement in Iraq, but Fallujah, the place where Americans have fought time and again, is closer to Baghdad than Ramadi, along the same road. So that to the extent that there was a risk to Baghdad, that risk already existed. The capture of Ramadi allows affirming the strengthening of the Fallujah position that facilitates the control of ISIS over Fallujah and over the road between Ramadi and Fallujah, and the possibility of moving further to the east.
Edwin Smith providing insights for us from Los Angeles. Thanks.